You returned to private practice at the Sydney Bar in 1980.
Yeah.
That must have presented an enormous contrast to you, coming from the Northern Territory, coming to the Sydney Bar. What were your thoughts in those early days on your return to Sydney?
You're asking me how I thought in 1980.
I'm sure you have a few recollections of setting up chambers in Phillip Street and thinking this was a very far cry from the north.
Yeah, I joined Frederick Jordan Chambers, which was then in Macquarie Street. Well, I was lucky. I had work straight away. And the Barton case, remember the Alexander Barton?
Would you like to talk a little bit about that?
It was it was a scandalised period actually. The 60s and 70s. The mining boom was on. The share market went mad, and everybody was trying to outdo everybody else. And Barton had a company called Bounty Oil, which had some oil leases around New Zealand. And I can't really remember it all now, but he suddenly went to Paraguay with his son and daughter-in-law. And there was then a lot of talk around Sydney about how he'd gone there to avoid prosecution for defrauding shareholders. I could never quite work out what the case was, and neither could anyone else, as a matter of fact. And
We're talking matters of high finance, in other words.
Lionel Murphy was the Commonwealth Attorney General at the time, and he made some very denunciatory speeches about Barton, who was sheltering in a non-extradition country. Then one day Alex decided to come back all on his own, and he came back with his son, and the state then had to make good all its threats and prosecute him, which they were never able to successfully accomplish. He was first of all prosecuted on an information alleging some sort of fraud, I can't remember, and that was suddenly withdrawn because there was going to be some embarrassing evidence emerged about Peter Abels, as I remember it.
I take it didn't emerge?
No, well, what happened then was the Crown filed an ex officio indictment in the Supreme Court and tried to start the trial there, which is when I came into it. And we got a stay of proceedings until there'd been a committal. So it went back to committal again. This time he was committed for trial, but the trial did never proceed. And I think Mary Gaudron, as Solicitor General, then made the decision that it wasn't worth powder and shot. And it also involved a barrister called Laurie Gruzman. He was also a defendant, but he was. They discontinued the case against him too and paid him some compensation. So it was all a bit of a farce, but it was good for me.
So you had chambers, as you said, in Frederick Jordan Chambers, and I think you ended up being the leading person there, weren't you?
I'm probably the oldest.
Yes. So in 1982, you, and this is where, of course, you became shot, as it were, to national prominence. You became known for leading the prosecution in the Azaria Chamberlain trial, and that, of course, was the infamous trial where Lindy Chamberlain was tried and convicted of her baby's murder. I must ask you, only because it was drawn to my attention just this morning, that I believe the Daily Telegraph had to print an apology to you. Can you just explain a little about what happened? Because I wasn't aware of the story they ran in April.
It was the Telegraph and the Australian. Oh, Mrs. Chamberlain gave a talk at some public gathering and in effect accused me of rigging the trial and signalling to witnesses, and it was complete nonsense. But I don't know why the Australian ran the story. There's a journalist called Carolyn Overington who's fairly senior, and I think she must didn't think about it. I don't know. Anyway, I was I was annoyed by it. I wasn't upset. I was just annoyed that they'd print this garbage, because these days, once that sort of stuff gets onto the internet, it stays there, and I didn't expect people to take it very seriously, but I thought I should do something about it, and that's what happened. We threatened proceedings and settled it.
I might be wrong about the dates, but when Lindy Chamberlain was here in the country, she was also requesting that there be a formal pardon issued. You obviously heard about that there should be a complete expunging of the whole matter. I'm just interested in, I suppose, your reflections on that.
I resolved not to talk about the Chamberlain case publicly, and I think I'll stay with that.
Would there be any comments you would make in a broad or general way about that particular case?
Well, there was a great deal of so-called expert evidence led by the Crown, which seemed on its face to be plausible, and the material which emerged at the Royal Commission was largely new and wasn't led at the trial. Had it been available at the trial, things would have probably been different, but who knows?